What's up, everybody? Gajewski here, back again with the Awesemo team to talk some college football DFS. Maction returns Wednesday, November the 17th. 2 games up, 2 games down. We are going to get into everything you need to know. But before we get started, make sure to hit that thumbs up button, subscribe to the video, and hit the notification bell so you know when this and all other content goes live. We'll be bringing you behind the glass, showing you some of our player usage for college football. Everything you need to know about opportunity for these teams is right here. Our first game, we have Northern Illinois taking on Buffalo. This is a 1.5-point spread in favor of Northern Illinois. The total is 61.5 points, so pretty healthy total overall here. Both of these teams playing extremely fast. Northern Illinois 74 plays per game, Buffalo 76.5, and both these teams fairly run-centric. Northern Illinois is only passing 38% of the time, whereas Buffalo is about 43.5%. But overall, both these teams have struggled mightily on defense. Both these teams allow over 215 rushing yards per game. Buffalo's also been susceptible to the pass, as has Northern Illinois in some spots. So a lot pointing towards the potential for points to be scored here. Fantastic for DFS, and this is where we should focus a lot of our attention. On Northern Illinois, the most expensive signal caller is Rocky Lombardi. A lot of that coming down to his mobility. 376 yards on the ground for Lombardi. And then through the air, 211 yards on just 27 attempts for Lombardi. So pretty efficient here as well. Buffalo does not pose much of a matchup, a strong matchup against that is. So Lombardi certainly in play because of his rushing ability. Ultimately, you wish they'd throw the ball a little more to give you that floor, but Lombardi has a clear floor and ceiling combo with his legs. In the run game, Harrison Weightley has not played since week 5. That has put Jevion Ducker into an elite workload. He's had at least 20 touches in 4 straight games, and somebody you could look to as a staple of your lineups at a cheaper price. Averaging 92 yards on the ground per game. He's not really that active as a pass catcher. They use Clint Ratkovich a lot in that capacity, but Ducker does have a good workload on the ground, and they are slight favorites here with a matchup against Buffalo's defense allowing over 200 yards per game. They did have Ontario Brown return, so Brown, Mason Blakemore, and Clint Ratkovich will siphon off a few opportunities here. So it's not just clear bell cow workload for Ducker, but it's still pretty good because their run rate is so high. In the receiving game, Tyrese Richie was lost 2 games ago. There hasn't been an update on his status, but he was seen with crutches and a boot. Does not bode well for this game, but in the off chance he plays, just watch. He's their number 1 receiver when healthy. Without him, Trevion Rudolph, he's had 35 targets in the last 2 games. My goodness, the target share for Trevion Rudolph is immense right now. With that said, he's now extremely expensive. And Cole Tucker's only played 2 games since he returned from injury, a previous focal point of the offense. So there's always the chance that Tucker continues to be more involved. I would rather save the salary here and go down to Tucker. From there, again, really run-heavy team, but your potential for like ancillary options are going to come from like Messiah Travis, Tristan Twos, Miles Joyner's played a lot, but ultimately, I don't think you need to get to these guys. I think you try to just pay up for Tucker or Rudolph. On Buffalo, Kyle Van Treese has been banged up of late. He played in their most recent game, but Buffalo got blown out so bad that they pulled him for Matt Myers. Just watch him pregame. I think he should be out there. Van Treese has shown more mobility than in previous years. It's 115 yards on the ground. He's throwing for 187.5 per game on 26 attempts. So he is a little bit worse than Rocky Lombardi on the other side, but I think he's been involved enough to play in contrarian lineups at his price. He's only $5K. So Van Treese in play. In the run game, Kevin Marks returned from injury in a clear backup role to Dylan Mcduffie. Mcduffie's at least 20 carries in 4 straight games. Not very active as a pass catcher. They will use Ron Cook a lot in this capacity. And ultimately, there's going to be 3 backs on the field, Mcduffie, Marks, and Cook, but Mcduffie should handle like 70 to 80% of the carries here. Again, Northern Illinois allowing over 200 yards per game. And McDuffie's been efficient. In the receiving game, if you're stacking Van Treese or Buffalo, you have Chen Williams, Bowling Green transfer as their alpha, 8.9 targets per game, 80 yards. He's been fantastic. And then they're using Dominic Johnson as the wide receiver too. He's only averaging 5 targets per game, and he has nearly 500 fewer receiving yards than Chen Williams. So Johnson's cheap. I think you can use him as a cheaper receiver on this slate, but I would try to get up to Williams if possible. Jamari Gasket has been the wide receiver 3 of late with Tyler Stevens functioning as the tight end. Both are averaging 3.8 targets per game over the last 3 games. Potential punt plays, but Johnson's a lot more involved. I would just try to get up there, and it's not like Johnson's expensive at 3.8K. Game 2, Central Michigan taking on Ball State. This game is a 59.5-point total, but defenses are a little better on both sides. Ultimately, Ball State is the 2.5-point favorite over Central Michigan. Matchup-wise, Central Michigan is really fast, 76.5 plays per game, 52.5% pass rate, whereas Ball State has slowed their pace a little bit this year. I think a lot of that due to some inefficiencies, but overall, Ball State's still a 51% pass team. We've seen them play fast in spots. I think this game has a lot of potential for points as well. Then matchup-wise, Ball State's a little weaker against the run, 170 yards per game allowed, whereas Central Michigan's a little weaker against the pass, over 300 yards allowed to opposing passing attacks. If you're looking at Central Michigan, Daniel Richardson, he's taken over for Jacob Sermon. Neither quarterback is mobile, so you have to get a ceiling performance through the air to overcome that negative rushing yardage, which is live with Central Michigan every week. Again, very fast, very pass-heavy, and they have 3 options to stack him with. Khalil Pimpleton's the most expensive receiver here. Again, he's active in the run game at times. They'll use him on special teams. We saw him return a couple kicks 2 weeks ago. He almost has 800 yards receiving. He's averaging 8.4 targets per game. A lot of that is elevated because Ja'Cory Sullivan missed a series of games midseason. Sullivan is like nearly used just as much, maybe the 1A or the 1B to Pimpleton's 1A. And we saw Sullivan lead the team in targets in their most recent game. He's actually led the team in targets in 2 of their 3 most recent games. So he's just wildly underpriced for his role right now. I would rather get the money, save the money by going to Sullivan than paying all the way up for Pimpleton on a slate that's really tight in terms of price. Dallas Dixon's the wide receiver 3. He's priced in between them. Sullivan's the clear play over Dixon. In their last 4 games, Sullivan averaging 6.7 targets per game to Dixon's 2.8. And then we need to mention Joel Wilson at tight end. He's averaging 4 targets per game in their last 4, but 4.2K. I'm finding the salary to get to Sullivan if possible outside of tournaments. In the run game, Lou Nichols is the best play on the slate. He's unbelievably involved, and it's absolutely absurd. At least 26 touches in 4 straight games. In their most recent game, he handled 43 carries and 4 targets. He has 40 targets on the year and averages 6.7 per game over their last 3. Averages 4 targets per game on the year. 22.5 yards there, 130 rushing yards. The matchup is pretty good here as well. Ball State allowing 170 yards per game. Lou Nichols is just so involved that even at the elevated price, he clearly projects as the best play. A really tough guy to fade. Darius Bracy is the change of pace if you want to just take a contrarian approach. Ball State, Drew Plitt, locked-in starter here. Again, the play volume has hurt him a little bit this year, but he's shown the ability to be a high-volume passer at times. Somewhat mobile with 128 yards on the ground, only averaging 190 as a passer this year on 29.5 attempts. So the efficiency has been poor for Plitt, but he does have 3 good receivers in Justin Hall, Yohines Tyler, Ja'Shawn Jackson. Justin Hall is the best receiver on the slate, not just because he's very involved as a pass catcher, 8.3 targets per game in their last 4, but they use him so much as a rusher. He has at least 4 carries in each of their last 4 games. So Justin Hall involved in so many facets that he's the best pure receiver this team has to offer. They also have Yohines Tyler and Ja'Shawn Jackson. Another spot where Ja'Shawn Jackson's been far more efficient, 519 yards to Yohines' 369. But Yohines has more targets on the year, 69 to 64, and he's averaged 8 in the last 4 games compared to Jackson 6.3. So I think if you have the salary, Jackson's fine, but I would try to save with Tyler. They're both just almost equally involved. In the run game, Carson Steele has moved well ahead of Will Jones in recent weeks. Carson Steele has at least 20 carries in back-to-back games. He's at least 18 in 3 of their last 4. Will Jones will be more active as a pass catcher. They essentially don't use Carson Steele in this capacity at all. But right now, game script projects to be close, and it actually favors Ball State a little bit. So Carson Steele should be looking at elevated workload here. I think he'll be a contrarian play off of Lou Nichols and the Duckers of the world, the McDuffies. But he's just as involved in the right game script, so he's certainly live too. A really tough game, a lot of good options, and I think this makes it fantastic for GPPs. But that'll do it for us today. Let me know in the chat who your favorite play is, and hit the thumbs up button on the way out. I'm Matt Gajewski on Twitter at Matt_Gajewski. We will see you guys again next time, and have a good one.